Hokie dokie. Here, today we are doing Math 1026, Lab 7B. So we're just picking up where we left off from 7A. Hopefully you still have the lab document from 7A. That would be encouraged. That is suggested. And eventually we're going to look at the part of Lab 7A that talked about the, kind of like explain briefly the different treatment options and like the pros and cons and things like that. So we'll get back to that in a moment. Let's jump into it. Multiple treatments. We're using multiple treatments simultaneously. They just kind of reiterate the same exact information, the same formulas, N and R prime, and the two K values from the first part of the lab. They give us the initial value. It's the same, R of 0 equals 1. Note the tumor will be considered to be extinguished if at any time R of t equals 0 or R of t is less than 0. So they're saying that, so let me kind of lay this out. I kind of skipped over it, but we saw that in Lab 7A, these four options didn't lead to extinguishing any of the tumors or extinguishing the cancer, but some of them did like prolong the amount of time until metastasization, right? And so the idea behind this part of the lab is if we combine treatment options, will one of them be strong enough to eventually extinguish the tumor, extinguish the cancer, right? So that's what they're saying. It'll be considered extinguished if the radius of the tumor is 0 or negative, or less than 0. So if you use multiple treatments simultaneously, you just need to adjust your formulas for each one. So we'll talk about that as we go through. For each question, create a new sheet, label it with the treatment options. Blah blah. Be sure to copy the formulas from the no treatment sheet and just edit those. All right, so number 1, will the tumor metastasize if both surgery and radiotherapy are used? Surgery and radiotherapy. So I went ahead and with the 3 combos here: surgery and radiotherapy, anti-cancer drugs, chemo, and radiotherapy as the second one. Anti-cancer drugs and chemotherapy is the third one. So I went ahead and made tabs for each of those options, and we're going to basically start from scratch here. So all I've done is for surgery and radiotherapy, I think I copied this from surgery here. You can see this is still lit up, so we just did Control C. We went over here, we hit Control V, or just enter, whatever. So the reason I copied it from surgery is because we're doing surgery and radiotherapy. So think about what surgery did, like how they modified their equations. How did they modify? I think it just changed the initial value from when it was like 0 and 1, it changed it to 0 and 0.1. So the surgery part of this is making the radius start at 0.1. Now radiotherapy, going back to that tab, let's think about what we changed here. Nothing here, but radiotherapy was where we subtracted 0.06 from the R prime equation. So what we're going to do is go back to surgery and radiotherapy, and we're just going to make sure we subtract 0.06 from the R prime equation and hit enter, right? And now we can just fill out the values like we did before. So we're going up by 0.5. We're going to highlight both those. We're just going to drag it way down. We'll go all the way to 100. And then we're using Euler's method, so R plus step size of 0.5 times R prime. Hit enter. We can highlight these, drag these down, highlight these, drag these down. Boom. All right. Man. I killed it quick. Because what we're looking for is for the radius to go from positives to negatives. So the radius of the tumor went from positive to negative, instantly. 2 weeks. It's pretty crazy. Kind of makes sense though, because like yeah, I guess it's like the radius started smaller because of the surgery, and then subtracting the 0.06 for the radiotherapy part Yeah, I mean, it just made sure that R prime was negative, so I mean, it just instantly brought it from 0.1 down to 0 after just, say, 2 weeks. So I would say it took 2 weeks to be extinguished. So what did they say? Will it metastasize? The answer would be no, because it didn't reach a radius of 10. And so if not, when will it be extinguished? So it'll be extinguished after 2 weeks. That's crazy. Okay, so now on to anti-cancer theme, chemo and radiotherapy. So so same exact question. Let's talk about it. Anti-cancer, I'm going to just start with that. I'm just going to copy this first 2 rows and paste them here. And let's think about, what did anti-cancer drugs change for these equations? Well, anti-cancer drugs was the one that changed the K1 and K2, I think they were. So it changed it from like 0.8 to 0.4, and it changed 0.3 to 0.15. So that's the anti-cancer part. Now chemotherapy, what did chemotherapy change? Chemotherapy was where we subtracted this extra bit, this chemotherapy situation, from the N calculation. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that, like literally just Control-C, copy that text there, and then go to the N value and click at the very end, but inside the parentheses there, and hit Control-V, and we're pasting that chemotherapy, portion. And then for radiotherapy, again, that's where we're subtracting just 0.06 from the R prime value. So we just tack on minus 0.06, hit enter, and we're going to go from 0 to 0.5, highlight both those, drag this down a bunch. I'm going to do Euler's method, so we click on R plus 0.5 times R prime, hit enter, highlight these, drag these down, highlight all 3, drag these down. And we're looking for the radius again to go to 0 or in the negative. So it's in the negatives here, which is a good sign. And it doesn't go to the negatives until it's dropping until about 19 weeks. So at 18 weeks, it's still very small, but at 19, you can see the R value goes negative. So I would say, to answer this, will it metastasize? No, because it doesn't reach a radius of 10. If so, if not, when will it be extinguished? So it will be extinguished at 19 weeks because the radius crosses from positive to negative. All right, consider the treatment where both anti-cancer and chemotherapy are used. So anti-cancer drugs, let's start with those. We're going to copy these again. Control-C, click here, Control-V. This is where, again, for anti-cancer, we make sure we have 0.4 and 0.15 as the K values out in front for N and R prime respectively. And then radiotherapy was the one that subtracted the 0.06 on the R prime, minus 0.06. So I think we're using radiation or radiotherapy. Oh, wait, shit, did I label that wrong? Hold up. It's supposed to be chemo. Bruh. Did I mess any of the other ones up? I was confused because we were using radiotherapy for a lot of it. Okay, this last one is not radio. It's chemo. Oopsies. Sorry about that. I'm always making little mistakes like that. So let's get rid of the 0.06. Alright. I think I have everything else right, hopefully. Yeah, there we go. So, chemotherapy. What did chemotherapy do? That was where we subtract this whole thing from the inside of the N calculation. So copy that, go over here, click to the right of 0.5, hit Control-V, paste that in there. I think that should be it, but I want to make sure, this one's tricky because you want to make sure, I might need to go back actually, because this 0.3 might be referring to K2 when I think about it. Let me go back to lab 1. Where's the chemotherapy stuff? Nope. Oh, shoot. So 0.3 was not a K2. Okay, so I just had to make sure that 0.3 wasn't referring to the K2 value here. See that? Oh, get rid of that. This K2 value, it was just, I guess, a random 0.3. Okay. Okay, so we're good. So 0.3t over t plus 1. We've tacked that on, and we just hit enter. We should be good now. So these are our two formulas, bam and bam. We're going to go up by 0.5. I'm going to bring me back in. I'm going to highlight these two, drag these down a bit. I think it said something about eventually going up to like 500 weeks, so I'm going to go ahead and drag it down to that. I think it's at 520 maybe. Let's go to 521. Let me double check that. Yeah, they said eventually going to 10 years or 520 weeks. Okay. So that's why I've done that. Let's get back up. We find our R value by doing Euler's method. So R plus 0.5, the step size, times R prime. Nope, R prime. There we go. We'll drag these two down. Highlight all three. Let's go ahead and drag all three of these down the entire way. Go to 520. All right, maybe a little bit lower. Okay, I think I see what they're getting at. Okay, let's go back up. And the radius is starting at 1. It looks like it's picking up. Oh, and then it might start to go down again. Okay, so it looks like it hits like a max radius, and then it's decreasing. Let's do a little mouse action here. Oh, God. Went too crazy. All right, let's see if we can go a little slower. So it's going up, it's going up, it's going down. Down. See that? Okay, so, I mean, probably could have kept going. I'm going to keep going here. All right, let me highlight these. We'll go even further. So I want to play around with the idea, the prediction that maybe it eventually reduces all the way to 0, right? The radius, that is. Okay, it's a very slow process, but it's almost like a solid bet. Like it's almost like a what do you call it? Like a benign, or like a it's not growing. It's only shrinking just slowly. So okay. So consider those, drag your formulas until you reach 10 years, what's going on. So I would say that the radius of the tumor has grown up to some point, and then it started shrinking. The radius has started shrinking. So the tumor, the cancer has started, going away, I guess, just over a very, very long period of time. And so you can probably predict that over a long period of time, it's going to just keep going away. Okay. Let's just call it that. All right. Now, effects of treatment on the patient. So they're obviously like highlighting the fact that cancer treatment already is like super intense and draining on the body and insane financially, and it's awful, right? So, of course, combining treatments together like they recommend is, even worse. Like it, multiplies the effects. So they say on page 2 of lab 5, I think they're talking about lab 7. I don't know what lab 5 has to do with it. They said there's like pros and cons of the different treatments, the individual treatments. Any plan will have some effect. Consider all these factors and their interactions when you answer the questions below. All right. Number 1, what effects do you think the multiple treatment plan number 1 would have on a patient's quality of life? So surgery and radiotherapy. So most of these are going to be very similar answers. Of course, all these treatments are going to be just like terrible on the body. They're going to like kill other cells and like make living just hell in general. Let's see if we can answer specific questions regarding surgery and radiotherapy. All right. Surgery. What do they say about surgery? They say if the tumor is more aggressive, it can be surgically removed. This can greatly decrease this tumor size or even eliminate it. So what effect would it have on the patient's quality of life? So, I mean, surgery sounds pretty good, based on that statement. To have the tumor removed, the majority, like to shrink down the size, that sounds like a positive, but surgery itself is probably pretty terrible and intense and the preparation for it and the aftermath of it, the drugs you have to take after surgery, like it's terrible, right? So then, talk maybe something about that. Patient's quality of life would be maybe good if the surgery is, most beneficial. Maybe like terrible in the short term, better in the long term. I don't know. Radiotherapy, let's see what they say about that. Radiation involves shooting focus beams of radiation at the tumor to disrupt the cancer cell's DNA and kill them. It can be very effective. The therapeutic dose of radiation can cause problems of its own, though, including radiation burns, infertility, and even more cancer. Okay, well, now these three things sound god-awful. So, I mean, it's double-edged sword, right? Shit, I mean, yeah, you say what you want about that. I mean, radiation's amazingly effective, except you'll just be a mess afterwards. Okay. If you're trying to have kids, you might be infertile afterwards, might even cause more cancer. It's ridiculous. Okay, so answer what you want on those. Anti-cancer drugs, chemotherapy, and radiotherapy. So what effect would this have on the patient's quality of life? So anti-cancer drugs, let's see what they say about that. It'll target the cancer cells, greatly decrease the rate at which they divide, which is amazing. It's very safe, but it's very expensive. So, I mean, quality of life, if they have the money for it, it could probably greatly increase your quality of life. It's very safe, they say, as opposed to other like radiation things, but it's very expensive. So you might go broke, but you might be living better, unless you're combining it with chemotherapy and radiotherapy. So chemotherapy, it kills fast-growing cells, and so it's effective against cancer, but it indiscriminately kills many other healthy cells. So you've experienced family members or friends or whomever that have had chemotherapy or even radiation. What's their life looking like? You know what I mean? How's their quality of life? Maybe use that as a gauge. So chemotherapy and radiation, I don't know a ton of differences between them, but you're just shredding away at your body and the cells in your body. So it sounds like a pretty terrible quality of life, if you ask me. That's just me. What effects do you think the number 3 would have? Drugs and chemotherapy. It's like pretty much the same thing. I don't know. It's going to be ass. It's going to be so bad that none of these have good quality of life. I don't know what they want you to answer here. All right. Number 4. Suppose surgery is not an option for your patient. First, explain why this might be the case. So why might surgery not be an option? Well, maybe, I don't know. I really am not an expert on this, but maybe it's not an option if maybe the cancer has grown too large that surgery is not worth it. I don't know if that would be the case. Maybe the tumor's not big enough that surgery's not worth it. That's maybe a better, more optimistic situation. Like surgery's not urgent, but to not be an option, maybe it's super expensive and they can't afford it, or maybe the location of the tumor on the body could affect, like you might be more likely to be able to have surgery on one part of the body and then like not on another part of the body, right? If the tumor's near like other important vital organs or something. I don't know. This is brainstorming here. I have no idea. But that's a little bit on that. Since plan number 1 involves surgery, it's no longer a possibility for a patient. So based on both your calculations and reasoning above, which of the other 2 multiple treatment plans do you think is the best choice for your patient? So if number 1's not an option, between 2 or 3, which one's the better option? Well, I mean, I think they both suck. The only difference is radiotherapy versus not radiotherapy. But we saw in the calculations that without the radiotherapy, you still have the cancer for a while. It's going down, but you have it for 10 to 20 years, whereas the cancer should be gone in 19 weeks. That's less than 6 months if you include the radiotherapy. So, okay, there's something to that then. Maybe, you knock out all insane treatment options together for a grueling 5-6 months, but then it's gone. Hopefully the cancer's gone, right? So maybe you do the crazy option of doing everything at once to get rid of that cancer, and you pray that it doesn't come back. So the factors that contributed to your decision: both treatment plans suck because treating cancer sucks, but option number 2 makes the tumor go away, or the cancer go away, ideally. So that's why. All right. Super fun, positive lab here. Hope you had a good time. I know I did. Don't know why they make you play doctor. It's a math class. It's pretty intense, especially if you have, traumatic experiences with people who have had cancer in your life. So, F cancer. Hope this lab helped. Hope this video helped. If you have questions, let me know. All right. It was a lot of fun. Thanks for sticking around. All right. I'll see you in the next and final lab, Lab 8. See you next time. Bye-bye.